Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We are broadcasting on all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday, usually from 7 to 8, but tonight from 8 to 9. And we're broadcasting on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, and also, folks, on TikTok. So please do send in your comments. Please send in your greetings. You know, we love to hear from you. Send in your questions and tell us, did you see the solar eclipse this evening? We decided, because there would be quite a few of our viewers who might be interested in that, and because the maximum eclipse was happening about 7:05, we decided to knock the program along an hour this evening to give everybody a chance to see it. And, well, I have to say, here in Glasgow, we didn't really see very much. It was, of all the days, it was, of course, a very cloudy sky. And so we were aware that there was a sun up there somewhere, but beyond that, not a lot happened, except it got a little bit dim, really, for a few minutes, but really not dark in any sense. I was expecting it was going to be like a blackout or something like that. And, you know, you'd be stumbling over yourself, you'd be bumping into people, all that kind of stuff. But no, it wasn't anything like that. If you didn't know that it was happening, you probably would not have realized anything was untoward or unusual. So did you see it? And if you did, what were your thoughts? And if you enjoyed it, the good news is that there will be another partial solar eclipse coming up in 24 years. Okay, the next event that will be the same as what happened tonight will be on the 14th of November 2050. So you've got something to look forward to, although I would suggest that you don't hold your breath for that. It is a bit away. Again, that's just going to be a partial one. The next 100% solar eclipse, well, that's 64 years away. That's going to happen on the 23rd of September 2090. Yes, we did look into and record these figures just so that we could understand the hugeness, really, of what was happening. So hope you enjoyed that. We've got a great show lined up for you. No question about that. Lots of good bits to do, and looking forward to speaking with you all this evening. Let's say hello to one or two people. And Derek was first in. He says, "Good evening, AFFG family. Well, I was slightly disappointed at the eclipse due to the overcast clouds, but at least saw something." And a friend of ours also said that they were wearing glasses and they could actually see the outline of the sun in a different way that they're used to looking at it. Kat says hello to everyone, and Oksana says hi, hope you're well. Yes, Oksana, thank you, and I hope you are too. And Anthony from Edinburgh has shared. Folks, please do take up the example of Anthony there. If you're watching on Facebook, please do give us a share. Please give us a thumbs up. Please give us a comment. If you're watching on X, please do give us a repost or a quote post, and certainly do like it and comment as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, please also give us a comment in the YouTube, and give us a thumbs up, and give us a hype as well. If you're watching on the mobile and you see the hype button on YouTube, please hype it. Please hype this, because it really does get out. And as we said, we're looking to really push our YouTube page, because it is underutilized at the moment as far as the quality of videos that are on there are concerned. So please give us a hype if you can. Now, the first thing that I want to I want to talk about, and we titled this show, No, Mr. Burnham, we don't want to play our part. We want to get them gone. And that's in relevance to an interview that he had last night. It was with GB News. And he asked us all to, quote unquote, play our part, as if this was some great war effort, as if we're fighting here for king and country. And we're all going to play our part in making sure that the poor old asylum seekers get a home in your village. No, that's not what playing our part is meant to mean, Mr. Burnham. We don't want to play our part. We want to get them gone. But before I go into that in some greater depth, let's actually just look at what he said there. Let's run that video.
You knew about HMO Britain. You talked about that in that speech to your supporters. Last week we featured children in the village of Piddington. They've written to you personally. One called Rex Perkin, 7, says there's a new migrants camp being set up nearby. It will overwhelm the hamlet. He says, we like our village. We walk down to see my sister's grave. It will change. I've been here for 100 years. He loves the playing field. Thanks, Andy. What do you say to people like Rex, 7 years old, who sees his village changing irreparably because you're bringing in migrants to live in their area?
Well, I've begun to become aware of the campaign from Piddington, and I absolutely am prepared to
meet Rex.
I will listen to what people are saying and respond to the concerns that they are putting forward. I don't know the issue yet in detail. But in some ways, as I understand it, it is about creating secure space and not have the HMO issues that you were talking about earlier. It's obviously going to be challenging, but I am prepared always to listen to people, to work with people and to pick up legitimate concerns, and I will address those concerns. I do have to say, we cannot have a situation where it's only the poorest communities in the country that receive all of the dispersal of refugees and asylum seekers. I do believe all parts of the country need to work to play their part. It's a challenging issue. We're working at it. We understand people's concerns, and I will look into the issues raised by the good people of Piddington.
Andy Burnham, thank you.
Good. Well, let's do a bit here that we can cut for video. And I'm basically going to say this. No, Mr. Andy Burnham, we do not want to play our part. We say, get them gone. These people are not vulnerable people fleeing persecution. They're people simply taking advantage of our overly tolerant nature and the fact that we as a country are stuck into a UN refugee convention which legalizes their illegal entry. So we should not be putting any of them up at our expense. We should not be giving them refugee status. We should not be giving them benefits once they get refugee status. We should not allow them to bring in their families. We should not give them indefinite leave to remain after they've been here for 5 years, and we should not be giving them citizenship. Above all, we should not be putting them in hotels or MOD premises or HMOs or farming them out throughout the country into new builds or towns or villages. We should be leaving the UN Refugee Convention, closing the doors, putting a lot of them in prison and deporting massive numbers. And if you want to find out how to do that, then continue watching this channel, because we have the answers and we are very happy to share them with anyone who is interested and who will listen to the solutions for the common good. So no, Mr. Burnham, we don't want to play our part. We want them gone. And you can take that to the bank, folks. You can take that to the banks. We want them gone. We cannot be putting up with this. Now, I believe that Andy Burnham himself doesn't really know much about this issue. I've read his book, Head North, and he is overly concerned with the state of play of what he calls the North, which is essentially just above the centre of England, actually, but has come to be understood as the North, Manchester and so on. And that's fine. It's good to have that localist concern. But as far as things like stopping the boats and so on, he's probably never really thought about that at all. So he is open to, I think, solutions. And if those solutions will keep him in power, then he should definitely be open to such solutions. And goodness me, we do need to get something done, because you'll have seen yesterday's press, and I had it here. And what have I done with it? Do you know what? I think it's over there. So I'm going to have to go and reach over. Excuse me for that. I thought that I had it readily available, but I don't. But I know what we do have. We do have a picture of this massive dinghy. Check this out. A 49-foot dinghy, which is just like incredible. There you go. And that takes as many people as a Boeing 737. And that's crossing the English Channel. That picture was taken by the French equivalent of the RNLI. And you do have to wonder about that. Okay. In fact, there was quite a good wee joke, because you have to laugh, in the Daily Telegraph, and by Matt. And it was the woman, it says Calais to Dover, and she says, "We will now be loading passengers in rows C to F." Well, that's basically what you're looking at as far as the sheer scale of that boat is concerned. And one of the reasons, okay, that they're doing that is because we're told anyway that the French police have been able to catch more of the small dinghies, or at least in some way inhibit the channel traffickers. And so because there's less small boats going out, they're taking the people out in very big boats. And of course, these boats are not seaworthy. And there's been 2 of these very big boats gone across so far, and they've both been rescued mid-channel, either by the French lifeboat service or by British border force. So these boats are not actually making it all the way across the channel. They're only the occupiers of it. The passengers are only getting to Britain thanks to border force. And there's another point that I want to make about that as well. And it's this, that, we're told this is smuggling, but it's not smuggling, really. It's just making a mockery of us, because it's in your face. Smuggling is hidden. So I will do a bit here, and I'll say this. This isn't smuggling. This is just making a mockery of us. Smuggling is something you do in your underpants, okay, or in a suitcase. It's not something you do in a 49-foot boat. It's not something you do with 230 other people in a massive vessel in view of everybody in hopes that nobody is going to notice what you're doing. Crossing the channel in a fast boat is not smuggling. It's a blatant invasion of our country, which is utterly humiliating for us all to witness. Oh, we're working to catch the smugglers. Well, there they are. Do you see that massive boat crossing the channel? Do you see the pilot manning the outboard motor? That's him. Okay, don't tell me we don't have the technology or the ability to catch the smuggler. There they are. Okay, and these days it's easier than ever to tell. We can use a drone, we can use a satellite, whatever. A surveillance drone can photograph every spot on the captain, the pilot's face, and commit it to a data bank which will remember him for the rest of his life. So as soon as these guys are picked up out the channel, we can pull out Captain Blackbeard, we can pull out Captain Kidd and drag him to prison, and we can put him away with the other pilots in order that the rest of them get the message. And, you know, if we start seriously targeting and massively punishing the pilots of these boats, then nobody will want to be a pilot. It's as simple as that. At the moment, there is a criminal offence of, quote, endangering another during a journey by sea. And it was brought in eventually after years of doing nothing in January of this year. But it needs to be applied much more widely and much more severely to every single pilot and anyone suspected of assisting them with these dinghy crosses. That's what we need to do. We need to criminalise these pilots and come down on them hard. And I ask the government to update that legislation. And you can update it as emergency legislation within 24 hours. You can pass it through Parliament in 24 hours. And that's what we need to do. Basically, we can stop this, and we stop it through the application of law, which is targeted against the pilots of these boats, and the application of modern technology against them in order to effect punitive action and send a deterrent message to any other person thinking of piloting a boat. So no, this isn't smuggling. Mr. Burnham, Mr. Prime Minister, if you want to be in power for a generation, listen to what we're saying. It's easy to stop the smugglers if you really want to. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I'm getting worked up tonight because, you know, it has to be said. It has to be said. And it's not being said by enough people. It's not being said by enough people. So, Chris says, we don't want invaders spread around the country. We'll want them deported. Absolutely. Derek says, well said, Alistair. Common sense at last. Thank you, Derek. Should have been sent back to France. No arguments, says Adam. AB Trains says, well said. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good, good. Now, just want to check up on something. AB says, why can't we just send army boats out to roughly where the border is and guard that line? Well, I mean, we could, but I suppose that would be getting into a diplomatic conflict with France, which might have to happen someday. But what we're suggesting is that there are simple ways within the law as it stands to peacefully stop this. And we'll get into more of that as the show goes on. Okay, where are we? Let's do another bit as well. I was reading a book, not a reading book, I was reading an article by Tim Stanley in the Daily Telegraph. And let's get rid of that comment there. I don't know. There we are. And he's talking about the migrant invasion of the Spanish enclave and saying that Europe finally fought back. Well, that's maybe a little bit optimistic, but he used this phrase here, which I really, really like, and which I'm going to do a bit about right now. The political necessity of the present is held hostage by the ideals of the past. And I read that in an article by Tim Stanley in the Daily Telegraph. And he was speaking about how the human rights laws of the European Union were preventing the EU being able to effectively stop the immigration invasion because the laws were tying the government and police and courts up in knots while the invasion continues. We would add that in many ways that was the intended purpose of them, unfortunately. And while he didn't mention it by name, we will point out that foremost among these laws is the UN Refugee Convention, which legalizes and approves of any method of entry into our countries, even if it appears to be illegal entry, such as crossing the channel or storming the shores, providing such people are doing it to quote unquote claim asylum. It's crazy, it's ridiculous, but that might have seemed like some kind of ideal which was workable back in 1951 when the convention was put together. Back then, we were really only talking about internal movements of displaced people within the European continent after World War II. But today, in an age of instant mass communication via smartphone, easy and relatively cheap travel, the convention is nothing but a poisoned chalice because it effectively invites the entire world into Europe and says that if these persons are entering in any manner in order to claim asylum, then we must legally accept them and consider the cases of them, each and every one of them, at great expense to us and at great time and risk to us. And that's simply not sustainable anymore. It's a document which ensures our own destruction. And we've always said that we must suspend it, or better still, leave it in order to have any chance to do what needs to be done to stop all of this. Truly, the political necessity of the present is held hostage by the ideals of the past. And, you know, I've taken to organizing my thoughts into these sections as well, because sometimes you can do a full program, you get a lot said, but there's not enough cohesive segments that you can edit in order to get the point across. So we're trying something different now with our videos, and we're basically scripting it, as it were, as much as we possibly can, at least the bits as we call them. And what that enables us to do is to get better views on Facebook, on YouTube, and on X. And we have been seeing improvements on all of those three platforms with these segments that we've been doing. And we have a fantastic team behind the scenes who helps to make all of that happen. Now, talking about doing things, this Saturday, there is a rally being held outside the Cladhan Hotel in Falkirk. And it's being organized by the people who have organized all the Stop Mass Immigration rallies in Falkirk. And there's going to be quite a lot of speakers. It's this Saturday, which is to say the 15th of August, and it's at 1 o'clock. And I'm going to be speaking there. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to be basically saying what the solutions are. Now, as it happens, the people in the Cladhan, the so-called asylum seekers, have been moved out. Some of that will be due to the local community being opposed to the presence of them in Falkirk. Some of it will be due to the government, the British government, wanting to close down the hotels and unfortunately spread out these people to the rest of the country, as we heard Mr. Andy Burnham talking about. However, the Cladhan has ended for the moment as an asylum seeker hotel. But the rally will be going ahead, and they've done a short video to advertise it here. So let's just go ahead and play the video.
Glasgow, Dundee, Edinburgh, Stirling, Paisley, Dumfries, Aberdeen, Airdrie, Falkirk, Forfar, Inverness, Elgin, Coatbridge, Greenock, Musselburgh, Prestwick, Stilson, Arbroath, Livingston, Dunblane, Dingwall, Kelso, Hamilton, Dalkeith, Johnson, Selkirk, Ullapool, Clydebank, Montrose, Oban, Kilmarnock, Lerwick, Cowdenbeath, Motherwell, Fort William, Brodick, Portree, Aviemore, Torridon, Dornoch, Campbelltown, Lockerbie, Langham, Longniddry, Kirkwall, Cumbernauld, Rutherglen, Dufftown, Airport, Merdon, Portsacker, Barhead, Wake, Crieff, Crail, Keith, Peterhead, Rothsay, Lairg, Largs, Tintern, Sonaway, Cairnmere, Glencoe, Donald, Bannockburn. We are Scotland.
There you go, folks. So if you're in the vicinity of Falkirk this Saturday the 15th, please do try to come along, say hello, get to meet all these people that you saw there, including myself and a few of my colleagues as well. So much looking forward to that. And I thank the organisers very much for inviting me to that. Going to be a good day. Looking forward to it. Great stuff. Let's have a look at the comments. Oksana says France has not stopped this. They've aided and abetted the small boats. Grant says, evening, Alistair. I don't think we can count on France for a thing. They've proven they're not willing or capable to stop it. Hi to Minecraft Legends. Paul says, the darkest hour is the one just before dawn. Things always might seem bleak, but the British always survive. Absolutely. Absolutely. It is a prerogative. It's absolutely a fact that we will survive and will get through this. Grant thinks a lot of the problems are downstream of the British Nationality Act of 1948. That and other acts that generally messed up the country back before anybody in power had any kind of foresight about where the world was going. And the Nationality Act, I need to look more into that, but it redefines citizenship as well. And it formalized, if I get this right, it's sort of formalized Commonwealth citizens as well. I'm not going to say any more about that because it's all in this book that I wrote. We have a whole chapter in Protect Our Country where we look at, we call it Protecting Our Democracy, Commonwealth citizens and the vote. And we look into how that happened. And then we say only British citizens should have the vote. So folks, please do search Amazon for Protect Our Country. The best book written on how to stop mass immigration and get some control over the borders of our country again. Anthony says, sorry to miss the Cladhan event. Hope you have a good Saturday. He's going to be at an event in Edinburgh, which I believe is being held on the Mound. If you know what time that is, Anthony, please fire the time in there. It's a similar Stop Mass Immigration event in Edinburgh. Grant says, a great list of speakers. Well done, guys. All the best. Thank you to Grant. Adam's going to Scotland, he says, at the end of the month, staying up in Dundee, or as they say in Gaelic, Dundee, for about a week. Well, I hope you have a good time up here and that the weather stays good for you. Minecraft Legends says, if the British and French border force fail to do their job, the public might take matters into their own hands, which would not be good at all. And this is why we have a state. It is the state's responsibility to make the laws and to enforce the laws. And it's not for the common citizen to do that. But what happens when we have a state that doesn't support us? What happens when the state allows what in many cases seem to the rest of us flagrant law breaking? That's when you have trouble. That's when you have trouble. Derek says he's going to Falkirk. Well, look forward to seeing there, Derek. Now, let's continue the theme. Today, GERS, the government expenditure and revenue figures, were released. We're going to talk about that in a little while, but let's just continue the theme of stopping the boats for the moment. And we spoke about leaving the UN Refugee Convention, and we said that we would tell Andy Burnham what needs to be done. Well, let's make it really very, very simple for Mr. Burnham, and let's lay out everything that he needs to know. And let's basically do that now. And let me just fire up my script, as it were. I can't remember all of this, unfortunately. So, here are the 3 things that need to be done to stop the boats. Number 1, we must remove the incentives to cross. People come over because they know that if they get refugee status, they get legal residence and automatic access to the entire benefit system on the same basis as British citizens. And they can also bring in their family members. And that in itself is a huge pool for the young men coming over. Once they get all of that, they know if they hang around for 5 years, then they can apply for indefinite leave to remain, which they will get, and which guarantees their presence here for the rest of their lives if they want it. And if they want to become a British citizen, they can become a British citizen after an extra year. All these routes to benefits, to family reunion, to indefinite leave, to citizenship, they must all be firmly closed. There should be no route to any of these as the result of a grant of refugee status. So these have to be reduced. These incentives have to be got rid of. However, that's the carrot angle. There also has to be a stick angle. And that's when we must provide a physical deterrent. Removing the incentives is all very well, but people need to be deterred because they fear the consequences of breaking the law. And that deterrent is the fear of the punishment of prison. 5 years in prison for anyone who comes in over any of the illegal routes. And thirdly, we must ensure the inevitability of deportation. People must know that they will always end up back where they started from, either at the end of their prison sentence, or if they volunteer to self-deport, then they can get out of prison early, and we'll help them with their flight home. But they'll never be allowed to come back into Britain again. But one way or another, they need to know they're going home. So do these 3 things and we'll stop the boats in short order. Of course, it means leaving the UN Refugee Convention, and we've explained all of that in our book, Protect Our Country. And I'll never tire of saying those 3 things. Remove the incentives, set up a punishment deterrent, and ensure deportation. When these 3 things are in place, then you'll stop the boats, and you'll stop them very fast. And you won't need to punish very many people from crossing over, because as soon as people know that there's a serious consequence of doing so, then they're not going to do it. They're going to stay where they are and hopefully make their own countries as great as they possibly can, because that's where the they need to be. They need to be looking after their own countries. And it's not for us to either embrace all the misery of the world or to make up for the fact that their own countries are not particularly successful. We have to see is there anything we can do to help their countries as well. I think that's important. If that helps to stem any kind of flow whatsoever, then it's something that we should be looking into. It's something that we should be taking very seriously. However, we have to put our own country first. We have to consider our own country first. Who's with me on that, folks? Who's with me on that? Folk on TikTok. MG says, I watched a short documentary on France 24 about Scotland, and you were in the background on a scene. Fantastic. I don't know what that would have been. Was it something to do with like activism, things like that? I have spoken to a few foreign news agencies here and there. I just wish I could speak to more British ones, quite frankly. They don't seem to want to know. They don't seem to want to know our, as Grant says, 3 very common sense points, which probably means they will never be implemented. Well, AB Trains thinks that if the people take the reins of power, it will be 70 million versus however many lawmakers. Well, that's could be said, couldn't it? And he thinks that if you add up Holyrood, Cardiff Bay and Stormont, that must come to about 600 or so. I don't know. I haven't done that. Too many, I think, is the answer. Paul wonders, is there a case for boycotting French goods? There could be, but only if it was done in a big way. I think the government could certainly say things like, the government could use various tariff threats and so on. But again, I just come back to the fact there's not even any need to do that. There's not any need to be dramatically confrontational with France. If we just do the 3 things that I said there, then the boats will stop coming. And what that will mean is that the people on the French coast stop amassing on the French coast, because they're only on the French coast to get to Britain. And as we've said before, of course, France understands that and is very annoyed with Britain for that. And I'm sure France generally would love Britain to set up some regime whereby the people stopped amassing on the coast of Calais. The French would like us to do that. But so long as we don't do that, so long as we're basically encouraging and incentivizing these people to cross and not punishing them when they do, then these people will continue to amass on the shores of Calais, and both the French and the British citizens are going to all get driven up the wall. Julian Allenby gives us a rallying call here. He says the English have been at war in the past with Scotland, with Wales, with Ireland, even with ourselves. And they were vicious wars. But when we all joined together to defend our countries as just one country and one people, then we became a whole different force. And the time is coming again to join together. Absolutely. I second that. I second that eloquent emotion. Well, talking about the Union and the benefits of the British Union, the United Kingdom Union, the Union of Scotland, England, Northern Ireland and Wales, today was the day that the GERS figures were released. Now, GERS stands for Government Expenditure and Revenue. And by revenue, what they mean is taxes, okay? They like to say revenue because it sounds fancy. but they basically mean how much have they been able to tax us. And I'll just speak about that right now, in fact. And I will say this, the union creature flying about, the union is the best insurance policy ever devised. And it was today that the Scottish Government's Expenditure and Revenue Scotland 2025-26 GERS report was published. This is an official Holyrood publication which estimates the revenue, aka taxes raised in Scotland, and also the cost of the public services provided. And it tells us that revenues raised in Scotland totaled 98.3 billion. And it tells us that spending was 123.6 billion. And so as you'll see there, the shortfall was 25.3 billion. Now that 25.3 billion came from somewhere. It came from, I'm glad to say, the British Treasury. And it also tells us that, worked out individually, revenue raised per person in Scotland was £17,718, which is basically exactly the same as the average in the rest of the UK in general, which is only £2 more. And however, what it also tells us is that the spending per person in Scotland was 22,281 compared to 19,561 in the UK on average, meaning that spending per person in Scotland was £2,720 higher than the UK national average. But the good news is that this money has been provided to us by the rest of the British Treasury and its taxpayers. And that additional money is helpful to us in a national sense. It doesn't mean that we get the £2,720 in our pockets. What it means is that without that help from the rest of the UK, each of us would probably have to be taxed extra for that amount instead, which would be impossible for us to be taxed that amount of money extra. And that additional sum has been called the union dividend, and it's absolutely essential to keep us going here in Scotland. And it's good that it does this. It's good that it does this. It's good that the British Treasury can make up the shortfall in spending, which cannot be raised from the Scottish tax base. After all, let's remember, economically, the point of the union is to pool and share our resources to help our closest neighbours and family when they are in need. And that's the Scots, the English, the Northern Irish, and the Welsh. And also to be helped by them when we are in need. We don't, as unionists, mind sharing. We're all about giving. We're not about getting. And sometimes we have to give more than we get back. And sometimes we get back more than we give. And that's the way that a union works. That's the nature of living in a union. But we know this. We know that Scotland is big enough and it's rich enough and it's clever enough to share its resources and its wealth with its family members throughout these islands. And indeed, it's a source of great pride to us that we do so. And as these figures today make clear, it's obvious that Scotland is better protected economically as part of a larger monetary union. That was true in 1707 and it's true today. And any call for separation can only be made by completely ignoring this economic reality. An economic reality which proves that we are stronger together. Again and again, we see that the UK Union is the best insurance policy ever devised. That had to be said as well, folks. That had to be said. And I look forward to seeing how the Scottish separatists will explain away these things. But the power of the British Treasury is an essential power for all of us. Now, I also know that the British economy is in trouble as well. In many ways, our interest that we pay on the national debt is horrific. I've read today, or was it yesterday in the Daily Mail, it's like 100 billion or something like that per year on just the interest alone. Well, there are solutions to that. There are solutions, and it doesn't involve necessarily mass austerity. And it doesn't involve putting up taxes to the point that basically none of us can live. There are solutions. I don't want to go into them tonight, but we wrote an article which you'll find on our website. I think it's the second one up there at the moment, the second last one. And it gives you a solution. And we will, as we go forward in the months and years, develop those solutions a little bit more. But if you want to read our material, we basically go to let me see if I can bring it up. Actually, this is you're looking real time effort. To see if I can bring up an article. Here we go. Inoculating against finance fever. Money reform speech in Chicago. That's me a few years ago when I was looking a little bit younger, with the legend who is Stephen Zarlenga, who has since sadly passed away and is no longer with us. But I spoke twice at his American Monetary Institute conference, and that picture was taken, back on the 26th of September 2008. So what's that, 18 years ago? Yeah, 18 years ago. At 10 a.m. as well, would you believe? And that was standing just at the shore of Chicago. There's one of the peninsulas that comes out where we're having a barbecue, a lunch barbecue after the conference had finished. And the speech that I gave is here. And I talked about the concept of the debt-free money. Now, lots of people don't like to hear that, but there is such a thing as that. And it is an answer to the problems that we're facing. What it means is that the state will create a sum of money and spend it, not lend it into circulation. And the economists and the journalists, and especially the bond marketeers, do not want to hear that, because there's no money for them to be made from the interest payments. But ultimately, that's where we are going. Whether it's shortly or in the long term, we are going to be moving to a situation where debt-free money becomes an issue and becomes part of the solution. Governments should still borrow an extent, but to the extent that they cannot, then the judicious and careful use of debt-free money is undoubtedly a solution. And it's never been tried. It's never been tried in Britain. Unless you're talking about the Bradbury pound, which was back in the 20s, I think it was. And that was a form of debt-free money, the Bradbury pound. Check that one out as well on the internet. But that's what I say. We need to inject debt-free, publicly created money into small-town USA, because I was speaking in Chicago, not into the financial markets, into Main Street America, not Wall Street America. And that is the proposition to which the next few minutes are dedicated. And it is this idea of investing in Main Street that I want to impress upon you as a money reformist response to the present crisis. Well, that was a crisis 18 years ago, The crisis has not got any better, and we're still living with it, and we're paying extraordinary amounts of money to the bond marketeers to enjoy their interest. And to be frank with you, those folk, they don't really care as long as they get paid. And so that's why they will use their power in order to keep the present system going. And one thing that I do like about Andy Burnham is that he has recognized this, and he has said that an economy should not be, quote unquote, in hock to the bond markets. And when he said that, which was about 18 months ago, the bond markets had a fit, and they were like, oh, we don't believe this bloke is capable of running the country. He's irresponsible. Well, as far as you, Mr. Bond Marketeer, are making a lot of money, of course you think that's irresponsible, but it is actually a very good democratic point. Why enough are our democratically elected politicians in hock to the bond markets? I thought we, the people, were meant to be the power, not the bond markets. And so that's one of the reasons why he's been at pains to try to say, look, I'm a safe pair of hands. I believe in the fiscal rules, which every prime minister has to sign up to. And I'm not going to upset the bond markets. But at the end of the day, you need to upset the bond markets, but you need to have people around you who know what they're doing. And whether the Labour Party, for all its talk about economic reform and so on, really, what has it ever come to after all these years? But this is the new one. It's the understanding the debt-free money concept, which I have pioneered personally since the mid-90s. And indeed, I used to do a newsletter on that, 96 issues, consecutive monthly issues, which ended in 2013. Anyway, Paul Hadlow says, the British story is a story of how 4 nations became 1 nation and 4 peoples became 1 people. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that concept is going to be the title, not the title, the theme broadly of our next book, which we're hoping to work on when we get a wee bit of money that comes in, which will enable me to dedicate myself to writing it. It should take about 6 weeks. And so I always ask folks, if you like what we do, if you support the work that we're trying to do, then please do consider just chipping in at our page, aforceforgood.uk/support. Here we go. Because you can do a one-off, or you can sign up as a monthly donor from £5. And it absolutely is essential to keep us going, especially at this time. It's a quiet time. And if we can get sufficient funds in there, then I'll be able to dedicate myself to actually writing our 3rd book, the 3rd big book for the Union, as part of our series of big books for the Union. And it will be about the British story. And we have a very good, I'm not going to let too much away, but we've got a good way of knitting it together. Got a really good way of knitting this British story together, the British narrative, because you have to live, if you believe in a nation, you have to live historically, which means you have to understand the past and how the past worked to bring you to just now, and how you can continue like this. I watched an interview with Tucker Carlson, and he was speaking to a guy called Daryl Cooper. I think it was about last week he interviewed him, and Daryl Cooper came up with this idea of living historically. And it really touched me, actually, the way that he put it. And he said that some peoples do live historically and others don't. And I suggest that if you're on TikTok, or on Twitter, that is, just go to Tucker Carlson's channel and look for Daryl Cooper. 2-hour interview, long form, play it in the background. You do learn stuff from it, really good. Now, also, you can get at our shop, aforceforgood.uk/shop-1, you can get various things. You can get this book as well, which was not written by us, but was written by Tom Gallagher. And you can get that for going very cheap. It says Scotland Now, a warning to the world. And you can guess what he's warning about, right? Separatism and its discontents, shall we say. You can get that. You can also get, for example, a wee badge. Screenshot. Now, let's just play the video once more for the Cladhan event on Saturday coming 15th at 1 o'clock.
Glasgow, Dundee, Edinburgh, Stirling, Paisley, Dumfries, Aberdeen, Airdrie, Falkirk, Forfar, Inverness, Elgin, Coatbridge, Greenock, Musselburgh, Prestwick, Spursall, Arbroath, Livingston, Dunblane, Dingwall, Kelso, Hamilton, Dalkeith, Johnson, Selkirk, Ullapool, Clydebank, Montrose, Oban, Kilmarnock, Lerwick, Cowdenbeath, Motherwell, Fort William, Brodick, Portree, Aviemore, Torridon, Dornoch, Campbelltown, Lockerbie, Langham, London, Tui, Kirkwall, Cumbernauld, Rutherglen, Dufftown, Airport, Nairn, Portsacker, Barhead, Wick, Creek, Crail, Keith, Peterhead, Rothsay, Lairg, Largs, Tintern, Sonaway, Cairncoop, Glencoe, Donald Road, Bannockburn. We are Scotland.
Good. Okay, folks, it's the top of the hour. Thanks for watching. We will be back to our normal time next week, which will be 7 to 8. We just had to delay it for an hour this evening due to an unexpected celestial event, or rather an expected one, which had been expected for decades. But we'll be back to our normal time next week, 7 to 8. In the meantime, please stay strong and keep the British end up. And we will see you next week. It just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. All the best. Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks to Del for your comments and to everybody else. And we will see you next week. Oh.